As a recent college graduate, I feel I should share my thoughts on education. After all, I've been everywhere since elementary Title I school, which is like the poorest kind, to a good junior high school, to a nice school in the valley, to community college, to university. So you can have all these statistics from the so-called experts, but I think I should just give you a quick breakdown. Okay, you ask yourself, what is education? Who decides it and how is it handled? It seems education should be simply about getting much needed knowledge, which in turn gives teachers the ability to appropriately judge who's most educated in specific areas. But that's not always the case, so we should now overlook the problem and possible answers. Now, the future depends on students. Consider California is the 7th largest economy in the world and spends over half its budget on education. While depending on source and time, between 25 to 50% of students end up dropping out before even finishing high school. And the Board of Education decides who learns what and how they're graded for the most part. Now I understand it's most logical to say education is needed to a certain extent. However, I question the whole K-12 education. It's supposed to be about preparing you for college life, or job life, or real life depending on your situation. But they don't even understand the purpose of education for the most part, the so-called authorities. The main purpose should be to help individuals understand themselves, their place in the world, and depending on the person, some specific training. If you can't do those things, what good is so-called education? Now first consider the present form, how we determine what class students are put into. Presently you're cast into a class based on how many birthdays you have. Only in a few rare cases is this, and if it's insisted upon, a student be skipped held ahead or held back due to factors like character and actions. Now age is one good factor in determining which class you're put into, but it shouldn't be the main focus. I mean, birthdays or even your astrological sign, I can understand that, but strengths and weaknesses in various fields demonstrated by character and action should be considered, not just as an exception in rare cases, but the main rule, or at least one of the main rules. Now the problem is, before you can attend a college or have a solid career to earn a living, you have to take what's called the SAT test. It determines also nearly the majority of your life, but this test doesn't test you on what's important. Health is not a topic, economics, business, trade skills, religion, spirituality, ethics, biology, astronomy, physics, anthropology, sociology, psychology, and a lot more are not covered. You may have no social skills, self-defense, know how to drive a car, or even common sense. And not only they're not covered in the SAT, but they're covered little to none in most of the K through 12. English and math is the main focus, then there's some history, and then maybe some science. And electives, of course, but it's not the main focus either. For example, there's not a single school in LAUSD that has any driver training or self-defense. Now, I understand religious, spiritual, and ethics not being focused on because there should be a rationale of separation of church and state. Scientific facts must be testable and provable, while many religious beliefs are faith-based and not valued by all people. However, that's not always the case. Einstein and many other great minds of our time read and applauded many religious teachings in the East, such as the Vedas and Bhagavad Gita. Buddhism is usually not considered a religion, but a rational, philosophical way of life. So at least why not study religion when it can be granted the scientific method? And if nothing else, religion is a major part of the world and deserves some attention, at least from a sociological perspective. Now, what the SAT does cover to determine your scholastic aptitude is how well you are at one language, English. The other part is all about equations. Now, I do feel these subjects have some important relevance, but you see how the saying is determine everyone's aptitude based on this? The worst part is, even if you are terrible in all the subjects stated above that are not covered, but great at English and math, you're deemed most intelligent and or hardworking, and have the top choice to go to any higher institute of learning. That in turn will determine your status of power, respect, and ability to earn a living. On the other hand, if you're a genius on the above subjects, not covered but are average to or flawed in English and math, you're likely not to be allowed into a good, if any, college institute of higher learning, which will likely result in you having low ability to earn a living or get any deserved respect and authority. These problems will also result in inefficient education and economics of society. The reasoning is we will be spending too much money in the wrong areas and not get back the results we should be. That will result in society having poorly educated people, as well as the wrong type of people having higher authority in the wrong fields. So products will be poor in the system. Could make a cheap joke and give, for example, George Bush. So products will be poor in this system, basically, is going to be the ultimate result. Even hardcore patriots of this nation can admit American products are inferior to most other nations. Most cars and electronics we use come from countries in the Eastern Hemisphere like China and Italy, and China uses a different system altogether. Now, one of the worst things is how all students are forced to compete all the subject the Board of Education requires. Sure, being a well-rounded student and knowing things like reading, writing, arithmetic, history, science, and some social studies are important for everyone. However, some classes like upper-level math and literature are not a necessity for everyone. Some people know what area they want to focus early on and should be able to do that early in their youth. General education classes should only require the basic classes like mentioned above. If students wish to be well-rounded or don't know what area to focus on in the future, perhaps by choice of their own and or some agreeing from a teacher in situations like those, should students like these take all the general ed classes that are required. Also consider the fact that many athletes are forced to maintain the same classes as other people. That results in people who are overworked in their youth and student life, resulting not only in poor academic life, but not such a good athletic life compared to how good it could have been had they focused on it mainly. Students are told you can do both. Well, technically that's true, but they can only give 100% of their effort. Otherwise, they may be forced to sacrifice things like needed rest. For what? So they can have quote-unquote success later on, which is really about having an excessive lifestyle. Or too much rest, maybe. Life is about balance, not overworking at some points to work less and be lazy later on. Although this is not always the case, sometimes athletes are given easy passes in the academic life so they may be able to perform well in their athletic pursuit. Otherwise, they may get cut from the athletic system so they focus on academics. This is not very fair or an effective system. The issue may be if an athlete, like a soldier, gets injured or fails, he won't be taken care of. But rather than teaching people to maintain their focus, and if something bad happens, we must pull together, help people get back on their feet. They're told no one cares about you but you, and just do it all. This just do it attitude is not considerate, fair, or efficient and effective because of the reasons I mentioned above. And it's not necessary in a civilized society. And grading is not solely based on knowledge. The key to a good grade at the present is mostly based on assignments and things such as effort, where you get points that you're required to have. Although these things are important and testing knowledge is a method we use today, I find the demonstration of knowledge is not used as efficiently as it could be. There should be more of a focus on basic, efficient approaches such as asking each student questions on occasion to see what they know. And as we can all see, especially as a result of Proposition BB from some years ago, that throwing money at schools doesn't solve most of the problems. We're throwing all this money on schools while our nation doesn't even have adequate health care, social security. Over 20 million people are under the poverty line and go hungry every night. So although some unneeded GE classes are good to have, without the basic things the government is not providing, we can't really be spending them on students who are not really interested or in need. We can keep on borrowing against the budget, but the future generation will have to worry about that later on anyway. So all we're really doing is mortgaging our future. And remember, without social security and healthcare, none of these classes really matter. Because without things like health, you're likely to end up sick or dead anyway. And ultimately, when students are forced to learn things they are not interested in and don't need, it takes a lot of strain on both them and the teacher. These efforts become futile as a result because students usually don't try, can't focus, or don't even remember the subject's information as well as they would have had it been something interesting and useful. We all can admit there are other issues causing our problems, such as people we elect to run our schools. Too much of our budget goes downtown to bureaucracy. One time I passed by an LAUSD building downtown and I was amazed how nice it was. I also saw an ad one time that said some official spent $10,000 on their own private bathroom at work. If you ever attended a public high school restroom that wasn't locked as it usually is, that was run by the LAUSD, you will understand how ridiculous this is. Then of course there are other common problems such as lack of proper nutrition provided in schools, apathetic teachers, apathetic and negative students who get away with causing problems for other students, and so on. But these issues are perhaps getting off topics and they are more complex with no simple answer for now. So in conclusion, our schools need major reform. We need to stop making ridiculous standards. Education should be based upon what is useful for individuals and the society. Grading should be based on knowledge and demonstration of acquired skill more so than other things. Students should have some more say in what they find they need or want to take, and our money should go more to students and not to our elected officials who should serve us instead of their own interests. That will not only help the student but also the teachers, all officials of all, taxpayer, and society in general. If you understand what I'm saying, try to take some action. Try talking to the officials of this field. There's nothing wrong with respectful communication on crucial issues such as this. Thank you for viewing. Sorry for my talking a little too fast. I just had to get this out.